Hello, and welcome to the How Community is Changing the Face of Gaming panel. My name is Rob Manuel. I'll be your host for the evening, morning, or afternoon, depending on when you're actually seeing all of this. We have gathered together some of the greatest community managers, as well as people who've been working in the gaming industry, how they've worked with community, how they've worked in game development, and sort of like seeing the changes of how the average player now sort of has this voice within.
Cool. And I'm Victoria Tran. I'm the communications director at Kitbox Games. We're making a game called Boyfriend Dungeon and Lucifer Within Us, and also publishing Dwarf Fortress and Mondo Museum.
Like, what are some of your favorite moments with working with the community and seeing some of the changes that they've brought into the development side of the gaming?
So one of my favorite things currently at Junkfish that we've had with our community is our modding community. Monstrum, the original game that Monstrum 2 is based off of, is a 5-year-old game at this point. It released in 2015 and has become a bit of a cult classic in the indie horror scene. But through our active modding community, it's still got such an active fan base that it's getting streamed constantly on Twitch, still 5 years on. It's still massively popular, and it's spurred on loads of challenges, and they're doing things that even the original developers that are still with our team don't know how they're managing. It was a procedurally generated horror game that would give you one random monster, and one of our modders has managed to get it that all 3 monsters spawn at once, and that's incredible to see. And the lifespan that they've continued to bring into the game, and to a game that years ago normally would have just died off, is really fantastic to see. Then there's also the amount of things like YouTube challenges that have come from very consistent fans that have been here from the get-go. Sneaky secret, despite being the community manager for Junkfish, I've never completed Monstrum. I can't actually escape from our own horror game and have never managed. But yet one of our moderators on our Discord and one of our most active fans, who's called Devil Maiden, has managed to escape with his feet. And it just completely puts me to shame.
I actually had a trouble because there's 2 moments for me that are kind of gaming history almost defining. I'll go into detail on the second one. The first one was that MOBAs exist because of a community mod, right? Like Warcraft 3, Tower Defense essentially created the MOBA genre. Like that to me is one of the most landmark community defining moments in gaming history. Essentially, when that existed, we have a more recent example with Auto Chess. The one I wanted to focus on, though, was Twitch Plays Pokemon, because that hit a special kind of chord, because it was one of those rare instances where it was mass multiplayer, like truly mass. It was hard to find a player with more games. A game with more players at once, and the fact that the community kind of figured out, okay, we're going to make this thing. How can we work together to complete a game that normally is for one player? How do we make it work? Like, how does 200,000 people entering inputs change the experience? And it created essentially a lot of meta content. And I thought it was interesting to take a game that kind of a lot of people grew up with and bring it in, pretty much 20 years later into this new genre. So that to me was really a hallmark moment to see that, because it kind of exploded outside of just the gaming sphere, and it hit like mainstream press, right? Because a lot of people knew about Pokemon from growing up, and like it resonated, I think, with a ton of people. So, but that came again because of the modding community and somebody just taking an idea and just seeing how it worked.
Yeah, so we're in closed alpha right now currently with Fractured Veil, and so we're using the Discord community that we're growing very slowly. It's just a way for us to have the community directly contribute to the development of the game in a very, it's funny because the community is growing slowly, but the feedback is super fast. It's immediate, right? And the devs are able to chat directly with players to hear why they care about certain features, or they want more exploration, or they want more crafting opportunities, and we get to have these play tests and jump on voice chat, and I just feel so excited to see where the game goes, having the gamers and the players actually just talk to us every single day with their ideas and what they are sharing. we also have this one channel where we ask people to submit pictures of their pets, and we're putting them directly in the game. It's a post-apocalyptic world, so the images are going to be not perfect, not pristine. They're faded and just going to be in different places around the world. So as the player goes and explores, they're going to be able to maybe have a moment where they see a pet that they've lost, or a favorite pet that they have now. So for me, that's really just the most exciting thing about how the community is just so active and just so eager to shape the way games are made. And to see that happening, it's just something that we're really excited about.
Well, for one of my previous companies, basically we were an app that allowed you to play your PC games on other PCs and devices. And so one time we had a teacher reach out to us and thank us for our app because he helps with an after-school program, and our app allowed him to be able to stream his PC games from his PC at home to his classroom for his after-school program students, so that they had something to kind of like occupy them and keep them busy until the after-school program was over. And honestly, it touched me so much that I decided to throw them a pizza party. I was just like, you know what, you're doing something great, and y'all deserve some pizza and a little bit of like fun. And so yeah, that was a really great moment. And my boss at the time ended up throwing him up like $100 Steam gift card or something, so that he can also like buy some extra games for the kids. And so that was like a really tender and wholesome moment, and kind of a way to see how the community, uses your app without even you realizing, how you, or your game or your whatever, in ways that you wouldn't thought of it being played or used. And then for my current company, honestly, I'm just really grateful that my community is so kind and so wholesome and so sweet. To be fair, they are small, so that might have something to do with it. But it's always appreciated when it's just like, you don't have to put out a fire on a Saturday.
Oh, there's so many. I love the community so much. But okay, I'm gonna like try to narrow it down to 3. No, that's too much. Okay, anyways, so to start, I'm very excited when I talk about my community. I think like there's all those like super cute moments, I think, that games like let the community experience, and when you're told about those moments, it's like such a sweet thing. Like I had someone email us who went to PAX West, like when we could all physically be in the same space together, wear your mask, and they emailed us and said like, hey, I just wanted to let you know, like, I really appreciated Boyfriend Dungeon because like it was the first time I used my pronouns outside, and everyone respected it, and like no one questioned it, and it was really nice. And in the game I could be like whatever pronoun I wanted, and it was just really like, it was just a really self-affirming moment for me. And I was like, I see we're just gonna cry today. And then like especially with Dwarf Fortress being like a huge community and Boyfriend Dungeon having like our own community, we have like a joint Discord server, and at first I was very, very concerned that it wouldn't mesh very well, but I think like how like when Doom and Animal Crossing came out at the same time, you had that mesh of communities that was just so beautiful and nice, and everyone was interacting and supporting each other. I've seen the same thing with like Boyfriend Dungeon and Dwarf Fortress, and it warms my heart so much to see that happening, because I think we think of communities as being very separate things, of having to define like, oh, I'm part of this community and I'm part of this community, and having them come together and interact and like learn and grow from each other is such a nice and wonderful thing. Love it.
That just goes to show you that like communities can do so much, and I think a lot of people get the wrong impression of what a community can be and what sort of power of good they can do. But like for as much as like we've seen communities sort of come together and work well, like communities are hard to form. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work. And I think a lot of people have been trying to figure out like how do you bring together communities? How do you form a community? How do you get everyone sort of like dancing to the same beat, or playing along well together. In the case of Boyfriend Dungeon, in those communities, like how does that work? Or sometimes how does that not work? Can you think of instances where you have tried to do something for bringing together a community where it's worked, or maybe something that has not worked for you that you later sort of like learned and sort of like taken with you as a lesson in the future?
Okay, so first off, we also did testing via Discord, similar to what Jen is doing. We did our alpha test through it, and it was hell on earth for me because we had over 1,000 people have to join, but we decided to lock it behind a role, which meant that we used a bot for half of it, but loads of the members were already in our server, and I had to manually authorize the email addresses of and assign the role to every single person. I will never ever do this again. Our beta is in 3 days, and I am not doing that. We were originally estimating like a couple of 100 people, and then it was 1,000 plus. And just advice for if you ever run a beta in a Discord, don't lock it behind a channel unless you're really aware of the scope. But nonetheless, it went really well, luckily, and it actually helped raise numbers for our server a lot. And the people who then had the alpha role and now have that chat, like that coloring and have that tag, feel really happy to be able to show off that they were part of that beta test. And really the key thing, this actually came up today in my community because quite a few of my community members came forward and thanked me for being a community manager for making the area feel so welcoming. And it got really emotional and I nearly cried and it was very wholesome. But the main thing that came forward was somebody saying that they'd spent their whole life not being very popular in school and being bullied, and they'd never felt like they had a community, and that our server had made them feel like they had a community and a place they belonged for the first time. And that most of that came down to my key policy that I enforce with all of them, which is kindness is key. We have a very strict no flaming, no harassing, no like politics, no degrading anybody, nothing offensive policy in our channel, and we are strict about it, and we are very quick with using cam de-escalation. And I'm blessed to have the two best moderators ever who also help uphold this and are so on the ball, and just constantly enforcing that idea of kindness and acceptance and calmness has really helped our community, especially given that we're indie horror, which has a big reputation for much more negative communities. And so I'm really proud to have the community that we do for the game that we have. I'm really proud of how lovely they all are.
It started out as like, oh, this is the worst thing, but it ended with like, this is the best thing around, and it's such a lovely...
It was so wholesome.
It's the
so
best
wholesome.
thing, it's just logistically awful.
Logistically
Yes,
awful.
I would. Yeah.
But like, so you mentioned your moderators. Like, what are some of the things you think your moderators do really well to sort of like help pull all of that together to make sure that kindness comes out as your main sort of idea?
They're just always really positive, and even if somebody is doing something where they're causing problems or they're trolling, they make sure to always, while being firm, be really kind about it, and also try and make leniencies for the fact that, for instance, some people might just be distressed. We've had people come in before where pre-orders aren't working for them and something's broken and they're stressed about money, and so they're just like, they're upset, or it's a language barrier and they can't explain properly what it means. And taking the time to be patient with that and to make sure that they're friendly and they don't immediately assume people are assuming, like trying to do the worst thing, has been really, really positive. But also, I know a lot of servers and big communities have moderator applications, but we also pick and vet our moderators personally, just due to the size of our community, which means that both of our moderators that have come in have been handpicked by us, and they're people that were already active, positive, friendly members of the community, which means that they were already established and known, and we knew that they had the right kind of voice and nature that we wanted. Also, the fact that one of them is the person who's doing most of our actual modding, and knows the original game, I think, better than we do at this point. And the other one is our longest standing fan and definitely knows things better than me. I'll try and go and do the community manager thing on Steam, and he's already answered all of the threads. He is a godsend. Honestly, we need more people like them. To thank them, we've started putting references to them into Monstrum 2 in subtle areas, because we just want a community thanks. So the one that we've put out so far is we have a fuse box dispenser for one of the items in the game, and the tester on the electricity testing mark is Dean Aiden for Devil Naden, and we're just trying to make sure that we put little references like this around for our community everywhere, because our moderators have done so much for us. It is the least we could do for them.
You have the best community. This is such a beautiful, story of people, again, the community coming together to do these amazing things. And there's a give. They're giving their time, they're giving their expertise, as well as like you're sort of bringing them into the game. They will even after the Discord or the server or whatever many years from now shuts down, like that game will continue on, and their kindness will continue with the game. So I think that is just beautiful, just a beautiful thing.
Yep, you heard it here from Rob. Junkfish, best Discord server, best community 2020. That's us.
Eduarda, what about you? What are some of the things have worked or maybe have not worked within the community?
I was actually gonna go because I right now this is maybe too business-like, but right now I have to pitch to people to go like, please help us to develop this game further. But one of the moments, but I wanted to recall one of the moments I had because it was a very it marked me because it was part of the experience I've had over decades plus with competitive and ultra competitive communities, which, as many people know, might be the reverse of the community that just got described. Not necessarily can be a little aggressive or negative, much more likely. Generally, it's a lot of passion gone wrong in some of these communities. And I've had a chance from playing Magic the Gathering, like competitive Magic the Gathering, and working on communities that had these essentially competitive aspects that people were in. And kind of as a larger thing, one of the things with competitive communities that I see done right and wrong kind of is their grassroots. Generally, all competitive communities that are done well are grassroots. So they're communities that emerged out of essentially something else. So it's people that really got passionate about an experience and decided to dedicate more time into that experience and decided to essentially be the best at an experience, whatever that may mean. And I think one of the keys is whenever I worked on games, it was listening to a competitive community when they were vocal generally wasn't working out. So like when I was listening to them and they were saying we want this, it actually it either didn't work out or it was clear it wouldn't work out. What was working though was, to give a more specific example, was I was assigned to a game that had a small but very dedicated community. So people that were definitely playing it a lot every day. And I was trying to figure out an event plan for them, and I realized these people care exactly about like this stat. This is like the one stat that they care about. Anything else, like every conversation in the forum, everything they talk about everywhere, this is the stat they care about. This is the one that they want to. By the way, forum probably hides like how long ago this was. Every stat, everybody cared about this stat. So I realized that doing events and competitions around this was actually what the community wanted, even though they didn't specifically talk about it. And I think it was like most of the players were engaging in our competitions. At the time, it had to be manual because it wasn't engineered for it. And there was a lot of engagement. And every time I see it coming back to that initial point, it was essentially this point of we were designing a PvP focus game, generally PvP elements are best done where you make your experience, you see what people want to do, and then if there's anything that could resemble PvP, you just let the community do it, and then you look at what emerges from a grassroots level, and then you support that. And every time I see developers kind of focus on that angle, the grassroots, like what do people care about, and it can be communication, right? Like memes emerging from the community, rather than trying to force things upon the community. It's listening to what the community is telling you, and then creating things around that. I found those were the more positive examples when it was, okay, well, what do these players care about? What do they want in their experience? And then sometimes you just have to listen, like almost silently, right? It's because if you just listen to that, then people can't come into the experience, they can't engage, and you want all these people to be able to feel welcome, and come in. But again, listening to that grassroots movement is generally what works best. And I know I'm talking about it because I know competitive communities can be really difficult for people to I don't want to say manage, but it's almost that, right? It's like, oh, this community is competitive, it's hard to get in. But in truth, it becomes a lot easier with grassroots movement, because then you're channeling the passion. You're going, okay, these people are passionate about this. Let's just keep them being passionate. And then it channels the energy in a way that ends up being much more positive.
What are some of the lessons that you learned that you would like to see applied to other communities within those competitive areas?
I think one of the first ones is kind of what's the developer's vision, right? Like if let's take Street Fighter, right? Like Street Fighter clearly is designed for competition, right? So when you're in that community, the developers are going to be very likely to listen to you for balancing issues or that kind of thing. Smash Brothers is like the opposite, right? Like Smash was designed as kind of a fighting party game, and then people took it like competitive. And I recall, right, because people were very vocal about essentially this competition, to the point the developers put a tripping mechanic because that wasn't their goal. Their goal wasn't a competitive game. So it's trying to figure out, like, okay, what's the vision, right? Are we doing, like, is this a fundamentally competitive game? And if it is, then what does competition mean at different levels, right? Because, being good in competition, that doesn't necessarily mean you're competitive being good at a game. It's actually dissociated in a weird way. Like if you look at player psychology, being good at a game doesn't necessarily mean you're competitive, and being bad doesn't mean you're not competitive. So it's about finding an experience that makes also sense at every level. So, if someone, like, just think about the experience from the perspective of somebody that loses, because if, people will lose a lot in competition, like a ton. The more they play, the more they'll lose. So one of the things I constantly see, I think this is probably the hardest one of the hardest questions to answer, but if you can answer it well, your community becomes a lot better. And that can come from the developer or the competitive community, is this question of, okay, what's the experience for the person who lost? Like, how do they feel? Like, what happened to them? What's the scenario? Because if you look at something like MOBAs are notoriously bad, negative communities. And one of the reasons for that is that the losing experience is awful, because not only do you lose and you rank down, but you're also like dependent on teammates that you may not have worked with. So all of these factors come in to make a horrible losing experience. And I think that's important, is to think, okay, well, what's the experience of the person that lost? And if their experience is positive, then you're going to have a much better community. So it's important to think about, okay, how can we make the experience of the person who lost as good as possible?
Very true. I think it was one of the things that I've started learning about Fortnite, is that a lot of people who jump into it, like obviously you'll have, X number, most people who play Fortnite will not win at Fortnite, but most people go in there because they want to do like the quest, or they have to go fishing, or they just want to hang out with people. So creating those, reasons that people play, or creating a better losing experience, I think is such a, that is a huge lesson that I think that I think a lot of developers are starting to figure out and starting to learn at the same time. Jin, what is your experience? What are some of the things that you've learned that have worked well or haven't worked well with you?
Yeah, so in the survival gaming genre, there's all types of players come to that type of experience in game for all different reasons, but what Eduardo was just saying about what's the experience like for the losers really resonated. Some of our play tests, we are testing the servers, and we're starting out all together. We all have all of the weapons and materials we need for construction, and we started to see this organic interaction happening with our playtesters where they are just working together. We're all like, okay, let's build. Let's see how fast we can run, and then we'll go and we'll build big bases and see how the performance does and how our FPS is, and then we'll look at each other's bases and be like, oh, that looks so cool, man, that's great, yeah, and then we usually save the PvP till the end, and sometimes in some cases we just spawn in a bunch of our AI and fight them. And after one of those particular sessions where we had spawned in, I don't know, like 150 mutants, afterwards everybody was like, man, that was so much fun just to work together and to collaborate and to not just focus on jumping into the world and killing each other all right away. And so to be able to have the full gamut of experiences and offer players those choices, I think it is shifting. That I see a lot of positive like interactions and things shifting, at least in the genre of game that we're making. And it also is exciting for me because if something were to happen, it was actually me. I accidentally shot one of our players, and he died, and he was upset because we had just traveled so far in the world. And then he's like, man, I just got killed. And I was like, oh, it was me, I'm really sorry, I didn't mean to. Everybody just like had a chuckle. He's like, oh, it's okay, it's fine, I understand. So that you can keep building on those experiences of collaboration, but still kind of have opportunities for the excitement and the thrill that comes from hiding in your base and waiting for someone to come around the corner and all of that. I think there's so much opportunity for the community to shape the experience that they want to have, but also sort of allowing for space for whatever. If somebody just wants to go and explore for 3 hours, then they should be able to do that and not feel like their immediate interaction with the world and the rest of the community is going to be negative, I guess. I don't know if that makes any sense, but yeah, it's been really interesting to see how our players are working together more than anything else. Yeah,
that's fantastic. I mean, obviously, like having developers think about the spaces that they are creating within their games for different types of players within the community itself, I think is such a great lesson that we're starting to see more of within like the different areas, the interactions, the ability to do what you want to do, the both hiding as well as if you just want to explore at the same time. I think it's such like a strong idea. Rim, what are some of the things that have worked or haven't worked with your community before?
Everything. Man, I think each community has so many similar traits, but it's also so unique and different in its own way that it's hard to kind of generalize these things. One thing that's tough is it depends on how your studio wants to handle you as a community manager. Do they want you to be the voice of the brand and the game? Because that role often falls heavily on a lot of us. Or do they want you to be kind of one of the many? For example, a good friend of mine, Bex, who is known as the voice of Path of Exile, versus like Ubisoft community managers who are, are plenty like among and spread out among the games and the studios that you can't like necessarily pick out a voice. For some you could, but in that general sense. And then going from that to the like kind of the age range that your game is towards, like targeted towards, and then from there you have to kind of figure out what they respond to the most. And for example, at one of my last companies, we found that the community really responded to like memes and updates about our product. At this current company, they have been enjoying a lot of behind the scenes stuff and sharing the development process of making the game. And especially when you come into a community quite like new or without kind of the reference of a previous community manager to work with, you kind of have to do a lot of trial and error to kind of see what it is that they get most excited about, what they respond to, and then go from there. It's a community management is pretty much just like waiting in the dark, and you hope you'll come across a flashlight. Sometimes you'll come across a torch. Sometimes you'll come across a volcano. I don't I don't know, but but yeah, it's and I think that's kind of where the importance of community managers play in as well, is kind of having someone that dedicates their time into tuning in into the community's wants or needs, and really paying attention and taking into consideration everything that they want to, so that you can better serve them. One thing I know that can or can't work is you yourself as a brand. A lot of the times these days, it's so many brands have jumped on the trend of being very on top of memes and very casual language and stuff like that. And sometimes I've seen that backfire. People are starting to get kind of a little finicky with how they want the brand to involve themselves in their communities. And so towing that line and that tone of voice with how you interact with your community or speak to them is also another thing you have to figure out and see what they respond to as well. One thing that also always helps is humanizing yourself, reminding that to your community that, hey, like, we're people, we have feelings, we're human, and we get sad and we get frustrated, and sometimes there's not a lot we can do, right? We can't go and program and fix that bug. I'm really sorry, but I can't do it. I would make a mess. The game would probably get deleted or something. I just, please. So reminding your community as well that the person that they're interacting to isn't the person that's going to go fix the bugs. We're not an amorphous blob of a company that all is like. My references are really off the charts today. But just like, and I think that kind of has helped a lot, and kind of also helps bring forward the advocates, the ones that are really kind of big fans of you, the brand, the company, the game, etc. They're like, hey, like, this is Rem, like, she's not the, and they'll be the ones that end up coming and helping, to your defense as new people come in and don't understand how the process works, and that kind of has a kind of a bit of a ripple effect. So yeah, everything.
I mean, I think you make a lot of great points. I think the idea is that I mean, one of the big things that having to work with developers is having that conversation that every community is different, and so the idea that they're just like, well, just make a meme, or just we'll do some behind the scenes stuff, and that'll feed the group, I think is such like a short-sighted idea. And like, as you were saying, that like some groups respond to things better than other groups, and having that personal connection is something that you have to do. There's no forcing it, as we've seen with a lot of the brands that you were talking about, that you can't just become the best buddy with like a corporation. So Victoria, what is obviously what's been working or not working in your case?
I'll talk more about things that don't work. Why not? Let's just focus on failure and going viral, because that's all we do. Yeah, I think one of the the biggest things I've learned from being in community for such a long time, not such a long time, but in the Kitfox community, is that I remember in the beginning, especially I think when you're starting off in community, you want to be that person that's like, you see all the other community managers that are doing super well and you're like, I need to be like that. And then I guess you kind of put this sort of pressure on yourself. So what happened in the very beginning of like the inception of Kitfox's Discord, and we were like one of the early adopters of Discord, was that I was so afraid of people leaving and or not talking in the Discord that I would allow people to stay in there, because I was like, oh well, they're talking a lot, and like sure they kind of are saying kind of weird things, or like it's kind of like they're not breaking the rules, but they're kind of towing the line, but they really participate in the community, so I should let them stay. Like it should be fine, right? That blew up in the end, where it was like, oh no, like they were making a lot of people uncomfortable, or it's like they were just making the whole vibe of the community seem odd and strange. And I think one of the things that community managers can do for sure is just to like stick to their values, stick to what they want their community to be, and to basically just like nip those toxic members in the bud before it becomes a huge issue, before like them towing the line means that the line is moved, because they just keep like getting closer and closer to it. So I think like community management is sort of a process of learning and figuring things out, because people and context and situations and games are all so different, that you need to be able to adapt and to learn and to figure out what you want and what you want the audience to be like, and giving yourself the room to and hopefully your studio giving yourself the room to make mistakes and learn, and not be afraid of like silence, or maybe having someone be angry at you, because sometimes that's going to happen and it'll be better for your community for sure. I think that's like the biggest like learnings in terms of failure from community management that I've had.
Letting people just be angry at you, I think it's such like a powerful thing. You can't keep everyone happy all the time, and definitely someone I think even you were talking about, like even before, developing rules for the community, much like you would develop rules for your game, or like understanding like what those barriers are, where those limits go with the community, and how that all comes together. I'm going to open up the floor actually for now, and I want to talk about the future. I want to talk about the future of community, like not just like next week, not next month, not like next year, but like where is this all going? What are we looking at? What are some of the things that you are either excited about, or some of the things that you see like in the future that you think, game development is going to have to do this, or community can do this for games?
Oh, I can start this one.
Yes, absolutely.
Right. So I have to start this off by, I'm going to speak about Stardew Valley really quickly, which means that I need to give my entire love of the world out to Concerned Ape. Eric, if you ever happen to watch this, huge fan. Followed for the entire development, followed from right back when it was Sprout Valley. You are my hero. I love you to pieces. But he's exactly what I think is going to happen more with community as games go on. Because Concerned Ape came across and had seen a genre that wasn't fulfilling what we wanted. I have played Harvest Moon since I was little. One of my first ever community things was I used to help write walkthroughs for Harvest Moon games when I was in primary school. I was a little kid, I had my DS, I had a binder, I was really cool, you could tell I was popular, and this is how I used to spend my time as a child. But it had issues. And there's a lot of things like LGBT rep and nostalgia from the old games when it was still pixel art that weren't getting done anymore, and the genre just wasn't living up. And he was a huge fan. So he spent years learning how to code, do the audio for, and the entire art for this entire project. And I think that as learning resources on the internet become more accessible, and as open source software becomes a bigger thing, as more people get access to professional level, like all forms of software, and even without professional level, look at everything that's been done with RPG Maker. I think we're going to see so many more fans taking inspiration from areas that aren't being done, or from games that they feel didn't necessarily give them everything they wanted. And community itself are going to start becoming the roots of developers, and they're going to become the next step in the future of indie gaming.
Absolutely, I can completely see that. I mean, we're already starting to see that in like a lot of other places as well. Even something as simple as like sort of like Roblox is where we see a lot of people, even within the game itself, supporting the community in order to create games, in order to create the games that they want within that world. What else do you see? Like, anyone else step forward?
Just to kind of go, like, I think that this has started this effect of, there's something that's lacking, people want this, I'll make it. And because there's already an existing community around this kind of genre or experience that wants a new experience, that wants something new. I think it's going to continue, but we're really I wonder when this is going to shift, because this is for now like grassroots community, but I think we're going to see over time, I don't know if this is the right term, but co-community development productions, where essentially the building of the community and talking to them happen simultaneously with a game's development. Like, you might develop a game because you're passionate, and I think we're going to see it coming from more quote-unquote professional productions, not just people that want to create a mod or create something. People who are like, okay, well, what's a community out there that's really hungry for an experience and that just doesn't have it, and creating something for them and with them at the same time. It's not just research of, well, what's out there. It's also, okay, well, we're going to talk to these people now. We're going to develop with them, and we're going to transform the experience. And I know you were saying like this not next week or next month, but this is already starting to happen. It's just that the fruit of that work is going to happen much, much later. But even from my side, like, I'm already talking to the people who are going to be primaries, and asking feedback, because it's a lot easier to implement someone's feedback months in development than years in development. Like, if someone tells me, I want this because it helps me solve this, like, they go like, I'm lacking something in this experience, like I was lacking, for example, something to do at this specific portion, that's very easy to implement. Like, we can implement it, it's done in 2 days. Next week, it's like, okay, we're doing this playtest again. It's there, tell us what you think. If the game's been out for years, that can be almost impossible or take too much time. So I think in the future, we're going to see more of these co-community development games come out where, because they're just going to be stronger, because they're already helping, like, they create the community as it goes. So it's a lot, I think it's just more resilient and more sustainable over time, because people are looking for these kind of long-term experiences. They're not just looking to buy something and let it go. Like, even today, people buy something sometimes with this mindset of, I might just be interested in this for years, and I want this to be a possibility.
Absolutely, I think you're absolutely correct. I've also seen a number of developers, go into the different areas to figure out what they can do to build that next version of the thing that people will be excited about. And they'll even go to, like, your bigger players, your influencers, in order to see exactly, what interests you, what do you think is lacking in this world, and how can we sort of like bring that to life. And it is a very sort of interesting bits and pieces where you do have like this weird sort of cycle where it used to be that, early access was that, your give and take, but now you're even doing like an earlier access where you have a few key players from the community start to come in and like feed the developer certain ideas that they can start to implement and start bringing it to a larger community to see how that works with them as well. What else are we looking into the future? What are you excited about?
To touch on what Eduardo and you were saying, I just wanted to say, like, I'm pretty sure, I'm convinced that a studio out there is eventually gonna, like, as a marketing tactic / development tactic, they're gonna take to Twitter, right? And they're gonna be like, okay, we're gonna start a game from scratch, and you guys are gonna vote on how what the features are or how it's going to play out. And so from the beginning, like not even getting like a small pool or anything, like this is open to like everyone and anyone, and so they get to pick from a poll, right, or something like that, and they'll pick FPS, and the landscape is going to be underwater, and it's going to be a cuter shooter with pastels and lamps. I don't, like, and and it'll just all be completely like community decided.
That I've already kind of seen some of that happening. I've joined a few servers where there's just one piece of concept art, and then there's everything else is up for the community to decide.
That sounds almost like a nightmare to me. I mean, a lot more support to whoever is doing that, but personally, I'm like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, no, totally sounds like a nightmare to me too. But I feel like that is definitely like something someone out there would probably want to do, like on a humongous scale, and just kind of like a Twitch plays Pokemon, but for creating an entire game.
It's so meta. It's like a choose your own story game to make a game.
Yeah, I mean, I think your point of like a early access, it's kind of what we're doing now as well, just and using all of the bots and automation in Discord to simplify our feedback. So our players right now, there's a bot for suggestions, and then it gets logged into our system, and then they can upvote or downvote whatever suggestion they like. And then there's also a bug reporting tool that we have in game that goes directly into the Discord as well. So I think for my thing with the future is that there's going to be a lot of automation, not to necessarily take the place of community managers, but just to simplify our lives and to make that feedback loop much smoother as well, and make sure that everybody gets a chance to suggest things or participate. And then I also see the reason for people joining communities to have much more of an intention behind it, because there's so many choices and there's so many amazing communities that are out there for players to join. So the intention is to, am I coming here just to get a key to do alpha testing, or am I coming here to hang out with my friends, or am I joining a guild because we're going to play together every night, or do I just want to meet other like-minded people? I think I see that becoming much more of a determining factor as to whether somebody stays in a community or not, what the intention behind that is, and if they can tell right away what the intention of the developers is to have new members join them.
No, absolutely. I think that the idea of bringing people together and like to look at what kind of community you're getting with the game is now going to be just as important as the game itself. I think someone's going to join X game because you like being around the people that you're there, rather than this shooter versus that shooter. It's like, well, this is going to be the community that has all the things that tick off all of my boxes, versus this other community that doesn't quite have everything that I'm looking for.
Yeah, no, that's really, I'm excited for that too. I think like for mine, I'm super jazzed, and we're already like kind of seeing it now with like the Wholesome Game Showcase and all these other games that are coming out. But I think the amount of game developers who are with diverse backgrounds and diverse stories to tell are coming in and creating these games that appeal to many different kinds of people, that we're going to also see that reflect in the communities and the people that join in on the games and get excited about them. Nothing brings me more joy than having someone, especially when we saw this for Mondo Museum, we saw like a lot of museum people who don't usually play games. Like they came in and they're like, so I don't usually play games, but I am into this game and I want to be a part of this. And that, I love it when we can like just drag people into our terrible little space and be like, hello, welcome. Yes, let's all play more games together, because I think games still have that sort of weird, awkward space in like the mainstream world of being like, like, oh, it's for men, or it's like, oh, like my parents only know that like I don't know, Street Fighter exists and Call of Duty, and that's their idea of games. So I'm excited to see more and more like wholesome or just different kinds of games come in, and having that diverse community come in with it as well, because I think games will only grow and get better as, you know, our communities diversify and get bigger as well.
Absolutely. I think that's a great point to sort of leave off on. But before we absolutely leave, to wrap things up, I want to make sure that we can go through everyone that's on the panel. Thank you for being here. And if you can, state, obviously, your name again, how people can find you, and one quick lesson that you want community managers out there or the next great community manager out there should know about before jumping into the pool. We'll start at the very top of it again.
Okay. I'm Eltanin Cassiani, which is a mouthful, so feel free to just call me El. I'm the community manager over at Junkfish.
For myself, Eduardo Sashkalik, again, a mouthful. So you can find me on Twitter at WALAOUMPA, so Wala Oompa. I talk about Magic the Gathering. I swear I talk about other stuff too. If you were a streamer, this is my 5-second sales pitch. If you're a streamer and you like the idea of a collaborative game for your community, you can talk to me especially, because I have something special for you, but behind the scenes. Now, as for a message for future community managers, I like the message of being open and kind, because, again, people are coming from all walks of life. So you don't know what someone's gone through, and it's important to acknowledge that, and that they're with you because they're passionate. I guess from a professional perspective, experiment as much as you can. Most of my best results have been because I was willing to experiment, and some of my failures are there too, but that's okay. Just experiment, because it's very hard to kind of develop something, you know, interesting if you always do, like, doing what's in the past is good, but try to experiment and be that person of the future, so to speak, because you tried something that is different.
That's great. Kindness is key. I'm Jen Curran. We're on Twitter at
Okay. Hi again. I'm Rem AJ. You can find me personally if you want on Twitter at Rem_AJ, or if you want to check out my company, it's at Disruptive Games. A piece of advice. Well, I'll give a couple small ones, if that's okay. Would be to oh my gosh, sorry, I'm blanking real quick. Cut.
It's okay.
Oh, there we go. All right.
Start from the top.
Yeah. All right. Sorry.
It's okay. Don't worry.
It's been a long day. Hi, I'm Rim. I'm Rim AJ. You can find me on Twitter at Rim_AJ. Or if you want to find my company, it's at Disruptive Games. A piece of advice for other community managers would be to know your worth. We are constantly getting underpaid, so don't be afraid to ask for a livable salary. Don't overwork yourself. Normalize taking the weekends off. You really don't need to, write that tweet on a Saturday afternoon. Go enjoy your real life. Unless there's some sort of emergency that needs an immediate response, then sure. And third of all, don't be afraid to reach out to other community managers. We've all probably been in your shoes, and we wouldn't be where we are without the help that we've gotten today, like Jen said. So, and we'll be always more than happy to help you out.
Amazing. Yeah, so I'm Victoria Tran. You can find me on Twitter at the VTran, and you can find our company Kitfox Games at Kitfox Games on basically every social media platform. Tip for community managers, even though so many great ones were covered and now I'm balking for one, would probably, it's similar to Eduardo's, but I am a huge believer of failure and learning from it, because I think failing means you're playing at your upper limits and you're challenging yourself. So being able to do that, I think, is very valuable.
There you go. And I'm Rob Manuel. You can find me at 8BitWiz and freelance. I help other people find and develop communities. And my advice would be, yeah, kindness, failure, be courageous, find what you're passionate about, and be a fan. The best way to learn from a community is being a part of it. So I want to thank everyone who's been on the panel, and good luck to all the future community managers out there. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Thanks, guys.